Thunder students, Mr. Williams here, walking and talking you through our next little subsection of notes here, the Me Decade 2.0. So we're talking about, the overall psyche of American culture, of Americans. Thunder students, Mr. Williams here, walking and talking you through the Me Decade 2.0. So we're talking about American society as a whole, its overall attitude, how the majority of individuals and other individuals that were kind of the outliers, all right, the outsiders, were feeling, what they were thinking, what their motives were, what their basic behaviors were, what was the norm, how are things changing through American society and American culture during the 1980s. That's what we're focusing on with this subsection. Technology has a lot to do with the changes, societally speaking, that are experienced in this decade, okay? We have rapid advancements in daily technology that makes life more convenient, but also speeds up the process at which some classic institutional interactions take place, okay? The technology also reflects a certain level of individualism that was born in the 1970s, but grows and is expanded upon, is almost exaggerated in the 1980s. Too much, being over the top in the 1980s was the thing, okay? With a return to a certain level of affluency for most Americans, and also almost a celebration of excess, Americans indulged in the finer things, or just stuff in general, as we experienced, so much, I guess, frugality or, rationing in the 1970s, right? With the stagflation that was taking place, with stuff being a bit more sparse. In the 1980s, we can finally kind of, indulge ourselves once again. And nothing reflected that more than the television show Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. Quick little intro here, okay? That's all this is. But this was kind of like MTV Cribs before MTV Cribs. This wasn't cable stuff. This was on network TV. Individuals would watch a show about how the rich were living. I've always been fascinated with, pop culture, individuals, the entertainment world. With the 1980s, I mean, it is just so well represented by the popularity and the ratings for this show.
Your host is Robin Leach.
Notice one of the clips there at the beginning here for the intro, Donald Trump and the King of Pop, Michael Jackson.
High note edition, meet the driving force behind opera's renaissance. Luciano Pavarotti even beat out the rockers to top the pop charts. The sport of kings has a new champion. Sly Stallone asks, anyone for polo? Britain's most talked about woman has it all, but behind the fairy tale fantasy of fashionable Princess Diana.
So here you have a show that's celebrating too much, excess, over the top. That's what's hot in the 1980s. And again, that's a big shift. That's a big change from the conformity and the modesty of the nuclear family in the 1950s, right? And some of the massive societal shifts of the 1960s and some of the individualism, not too worried, life isn't that great, America's not that great mindset in the 1970s. So here in the 1980s, still kind of that individualistic mindset, but man, we want to take it to the top. To hell with modesty, let's flaunt what we have and let's indulge in some of those vices. The personal computer, all right, one piece of technology that really proliferates this level of individualism, very basic in the 1980s, okay? However, revolutionary. This is going to change the way we communicate with each other. This is going to change the way that business transactions are carried out. This is going to change the way that certain transportation sectors operate, all right? So the computer is going to change the professional world, but it also changes the personal world because it gives you a manner to isolate yourself and entertain yourself independently. A couple of ads here about the computer from the 1980s. Again, just love this stuff. It's fascinating.
Computers?
Who's got time to figure out how to use them?
That's how the owners of a clothing store, father and son, felt about personal computers until they got one. And a catering business until they got one. We're IBM, and we've seen some very skeptical people become very enthusiastic. And that makes us proud, because we have more computers helping more small businesses than anybody. IBM personal computers.
Crazy to think about. We still have people that, are adverse to using computers, have a real aversion to that. But 40 years ago, again, game changing.
Some people have big plans after school. You know what Elliot's going to do? Jeff, too. Elliot's at work on a book report using Scripted on Radio Shack's Color Computer 3. It hooks up to his TV. And Jeff's at his Radio Shack Color Computer 3 playing the newest football game. But wait, what's Elliot doing playing new Super Pitfall? And Jeff's having a blast with a new math tutor. You never know what you might try with more than 100 programs for fun and learning. Radio Shack's...
So the computer is for everybody. Young, old, personal, business. Game changer. Okay, game changer. The Sony Walkman and cellular telephones, also two major pieces of technology or signify enormous advancements of technology that further fuel the individualistic, indulgent, excessive, over-the-top mindset of the average American in the 1980s. The Walkman allowed you to take your music with you. So we've got the personalization of music. This is the iPod before the iPod. This is the iPhone before the iPhone. Another great ad. God, these are phenomenal. Life's just better with a Sony Walkman.
You really feel the music with the Sony Walkman.
The Sony Walkman is a tiny stereo cassette player with truly incredible sound.
You really feel the music. You really feel it. You really feel the music.
Put on a Walkman and see the world in a whole new light.
Certain level of independence, enjoyment, right? You're no longer tethered to the radio. You don't have to tune in on your own time to listen to the newest broadcast to find out who the hottest artists are or the best tunes currently in the nation are. So again, Walkman, individualizing, revolutionary, makes things more convenient, all that good stuff. Cellular phones as well. You can now communicate on the go. You are not hindered by a landline. You don't have to sit and wait for that phone call at 8 p.m. You can be on the move and conduct business.
Phone in the car isn't that unusual anymore, except when it leaves the car for greener pastures, the high seas, or a leisurely lunch. Radio Shack keeps you in constant communication with their affordable, transportable cellular telephone.
Look at that thing.
Hello? Oh, yes, he's right here. It's for you.
Yes, I heard about the merger. 500 shares.
The affordable, transportable cellular telephone. Only
very rare in the 1980s, but still we start to see a shift, and all of these pieces of technology, again, signify a continued growth in individualism for American culture, American society. The media was also reflective of this. Cable television, born in the late 1970s, grows in scope, size, and scale throughout the 1980s, and it just continues to allow you to individualize certain aspects of your life. News in regards to CNN, all right? Music, that's MTV, and you no longer have to go to the movie theater. You don't have to go to the cinema to experience the best motion pictures that money has to offer. You can now, through the home box office, HBO, get that commercial-free, uncensored content. So cable provides, through cable television stations, alternatives, specified content for you, the viewer. You're no longer restricted to what is shown on network television from 7 to 9 p.m. or 7 to 10 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, okay? You've got this choice and immediately accessible through that cable box. First news, one of the early news broadcasts here from CNN. Just a quick little sample.
Stand by, ready, 3, take 3, Mike Hewitt. 3, start to slow zoom in a little bit. Roll tape, take 3. Ready, 13, full. Ready, camera 3, 1 center up.
Good evening, I'm David Walker.
And I'm Lois Hart. Now here's the news.
President Carter has arrived in Fort Wayne, Indiana for a brief visit with civil rights leader Vernon Jordan. Jordan is in serious but stable condition now at Parkview Hospital. He is recuperating from the gunshot wound suffered early Thursday morning. Police still have no solid lead on who attempted to murder Jordan.
So back when it was just facts and not constant speculation, okay? Interesting, if you continue to watch that clip, they actually talk about, unfortunately, a tragic accident of a mass shooting on a train. Again, kind of just providing context. It's crazy to think that instances like that have been happening for decades in the United States of America. MTV revolutionized youth culture, where we've got rock and roll and Elvis Presley and James Dean in the 1950s, where we have the acid rock bands of The Who, The Doors, The Beatles, Led Zeppelin in the late 60s, early 70s, really influencing teenage culture. We're going to have that here. Bam, disco a little bit there in the 1970s, late 70s. MTV gives way to another element that highly influences or changes American youth culture in the 1980s. And again, just further personalizes and pushes this concept of individualism.
7, 6,
launch
5,
of MTV
4. We've gone for main
back in the
engine start.
1980s
We
here.
have main engine start.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll.
This is it. Welcome to MTV Music Television, the world's first 24-hour stereo video music channel.
24 hours
ago, all of the
of music videos. MTV used to play music videos. It was awesome. Like even during my time, I can remember in grade school, middle school, high school, at least maybe half the day. Now, it might have been after you'd gone to bed, but they still would show music videos. Phenomenal stuff. They had some original content on here, right? So maybe talk shows, entertainment shows, game shows. But for the most part, 24 hours of music videos. It was amazing, amazing. Nowadays, you've got YouTube. Pull up YouTube, click on the artist, let things roll through. But MTV was that before current situations in our modern day. Pop culture in general reflected the let's have fun, let's make money, let's indulge ourselves, let's be over the top, okay? Music started to add more bells and whistles, whether it was the areas of rock, pop, try to think, rock, pop, that's the dominant genres, hair bands, metal, the dominant genres in the 1980s, country starting to see a bit of excess, all right, as well, but for the most part, it's represented in music as well, that mindset of individualism and excessiveness. Television programming, for the most part, again, less serious, a little bit more lighthearted. Sitcoms, glamour TV was big. Again, if you watch the episode of Raised on TV from CNN's The 80s, which is linked in the calendar doc, it'll do a good job of describing a lot of this, okay? Movies, teen comedies break onto the scene, and we've got hero dramas. Again, we start to see a resurgence and confidence of being part of this nation, confidence in our nation, confidence of being a citizen in this nation. So we start to see cinema reflect that as well. Hero dramas, stuff like Rambo, stuff like Top Gun, where American exceptionalism can be celebrated. Sports enters hyperdrive when it comes to commercialization. You go back to the 1920s, Babe Ruth and the guys were, getting endorsements to advertise and be the face of certain products. It had always been around. It hits another level with like Willie Joe Namath back in the 1960s and 70s playing for the Jets. It's still around through the 70s with some, high-level baseball stars like Pete Rose and individuals from the Big Red Machine on Cincinnati squads. But with the birth of MJ, all right, Air Jordan, and you might be watching the Bulls, The Last Dance documentary right now on ESPN on Sunday nights. Bo Jackson was huge. Sports stars become enormous in the 1980s, and it's another avenue now with accessibility through TV and cable to have those athletes reach out to younger generations, to individuals with that disposable income. The WWF has also taken mainstream Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, The Ultimate Warrior, Randy Macho Man Savage, all these individuals start to become household names in the late 80s. Heck, WrestleMania was broadcast on NBC, all right? NBC throughout the decade. So mainstream stuff there. But again, commercialization, excess, indulgence, bam, 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 big stuff. Here I've got one of the biggest pop culture, in my opinion, pop culture moments or items from the 80s. This is Michael Jackson's Thriller. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, he had been around through the 70s as part of the Jackson 5. But Michael Jackson would be the music representation of, to the best, all right, the best music representation of the culture of the decade, okay? Phenomenal entertainer. And this video signifies, again, the excessiveness that was popular in the decade. So Thriller is like 10 minutes long. It is a complete, cinematic presentation of one of Michael Jackson's most popular songs. Again, walk and talk you through that just kind of to describe and further put into context the culture of the decade, the individualistic aspects that were growing and proliferating throughout the decade. And that's the best I can do for you at the moment. So that does it for the Me Decade 2.0, the Me culture extended and grown throughout the 1980s. We'll pick it up with social issues in the 1980s with our next little subsection. Later.